Hi, it's been a long time since I made my video last, and a friend pointed out that I had made a statement on somewhere in my last videos that I was going to do a follow-up video and explain what happened next as far as God offering me His side of the story and what He wanted to offer me if I went with Him instead of going with the bad guys. So I never got around to doing that. I'm going to attempt to do that now, and I'm going to try and be really brief and not go on and on and on like I did before. So let's get right to it. It was about 1977 when the next important step happened. That would have been a couple of years later after that experience that I told in How I Almost Sold My Soul video, the 9-part video. So what happened was, it was about 1977. I had just graduated high school, and I attended a Keith Green concert. Now, if you want to know more about Keith Green, you can go on YouTube and look up Keith Green documentary. Somebody did a great documentary all about him. He was a Christian singer-songwriter who was active throughout the 70s, later 70s. He died in the early 80s in a plane crash. But he made several albums, Christian records, and he was very popular. He went around the country touring and doing concerts, and he was very good at stoking up Christians. He wasn't so much an evangelist per se as he was somebody who would help Christians get motivated and take their faith seriously. Well, that's what he was doing on this particular night. He said, if you're a Christian here tonight and God is not an active, living, vital part of your everyday life, I'm going to give you a chance to find out what's wrong. And I remember thinking, what's he talking about? I was a good Lutheran. I went to Lutheran church, and I was doing everything right according to the Lutherans. I was baptized as an infant. I went through the catechism. I went to a Lutheran day school for my junior high school years. And so I participated constantly. I was in all the church services. I did all the activities, Bible studies, vacation Bible school. And I was an acolyte, and in the choir I played guitar for the youth singing group. I couldn't understand what he meant. If God's not an active part of your everyday life, I'm going to give you a chance to find out what's wrong. And I didn't know what he meant, because I didn't even think my pastors would have said things like that. But I was there at this thing with a lot of my fellow Lutherans, and there were a lot of other area churches represented here. It was at Palomar College in San Marcos, in the gymnasium, multi-purpose auditorium. There was probably anywhere from 500 to 1,000 people there, or something like that. So he said, I'm going to give you a chance to find out what could be wrong, because Jesus is in this place, and I'm going to give you a moment of silence during which you can pray and ask God to tell you if there's anything at all in your life that's coming between you and Him. He said, but I warn you, if you're not willing to make a change in your life, then you shouldn't participate in this, because if there is something, He will tell you. And if you're not willing to make a change, it will be better for you not to know than for you to know and not be willing to do something about it. He said, you'll feel so small, you wouldn't even have to open the door to leave tonight. You could fit under the crack in the door. So I remember thinking, I'm not afraid. If there's something, I want to know. So he gave us a moment of silence, and I prayed. I said, Lord, is there anything in my life that's coming between me and you that you want me to change? And I wasn't expecting that. If anything, I thought he would say, oh, of course not. My wonderful servant, you're doing great, or something like that. Or just not to hear anything at all. I don't know if I'd ever heard him quite as clearly as I did right then, because suddenly he was talking to me very clearly. And he shocked me, because he said, yes, there is something. And he said, it's your record collection. You love your records. I had a collection of LP records that meant the world to me. I didn't realize how much they meant until that moment. He said, you love your records more than you love me, and if you really want to know me, give me those records. And that's basically all he said, and I was absolutely horrified, because those records represented everything I ever wanted to be. I figured right then, I realized how much they meant to me, because I started pleading with him, said anything but that. Lord, you can't be serious, come on, that's my whole life, that's everything I want to be. And I found out that I actually did kind of worship those records. We're talking LP records. This is back in 1977. I had been saving up records, well, ever since I got involved and became interested. I was always interested in music, but when you hit that age, when you get a stereo and records become a big deal. If you ever saw the movie Almost Famous, there's a scene in the beginning of that movie where the young boy, his sister's leaving home, and she gives all her record collection to him, and he's going through them, and she sort of tells how each record means something to you, and that's how it was for me. I didn't have a lot of records at the time, but the ones I had, every one of them was important to me, and they were my life. Listening to them was sort of a very, very intimate, meaningful thing to me, and it was my aspiration. It's everything I wanted to be was in those records. So for him to ask me for those, it was like when Jesus said, if your right hand offends you, cut it off and cast it away. It's better to enter the kingdom of heaven without that hand than to miss out on it altogether and keep your hand, or you pluck your eye out. That's what it feels like. It's just asking that much. So I left there that night very, very, very distraught, and I was looking around wondering why everybody else was smiling, and how could they not be just as upset as I was. Didn't they have something equally meaningful to them that God was asking them to give up? So it took me from that time on a good 1.5 to 2 years before I was able to actually go through with it, because I was more confused than ever. And during that 1.5 to 2 years, I became involved in a rock band. My record collection swelled. I started working, and this was right after I graduated high school, so I got a job, and I was able to buy more records. I was still living at home, and got involved with a local rock band that was starting to get some success. We were very popular locally. We started writing our own songs. We had a connection up in Hollywood where we were traveling and recording, and then we were looking at trying to get our stuff put on the radio, and just like every other band out there, trying to make it while we were playing covers in the meantime. So it was during this time I was working as a maintenance guy at a hotel near my house, and it was the biggest hotel in town, 5 stories, and we were renovating all the rooms. So I had a lot of time. One evening, everyone else, pretty much the work day is coming to a close. Everyone had gone home or was doing something downstairs. I was still up in the top floor where we were renovating the entire 5th floor, 1 floor at a time. So I was up there, and I got very serious with God. There was a young girl that worked there at the hotel who had seen my band play out in the desert. We did this whole big deal production thing where we sponsored this whole weekend out in the desert. Everybody came out. Even the local radio stations talked about it. And we did the thing from start to finish. We built a stage out there. We brought generators, and just those who could find us, because it was hard to find. It was way out there. We still had a huge crowd. Everybody was having a ball. And this girl was telling me how much she enjoyed that. Her and her boyfriend came out, and it was a big deal and stuff. And so I was reflecting. She had just gone back down, and I was reflecting on what she had said and how difficult this decision was for me. All this time, I was between two a fork in the road. I was trying to follow God, but I was wanting to follow my own way too, my heart, and do what I had always wanted to do, and that was be a musician. So I wondered, where's this going to end? What am I going to do? So finally I was getting serious with God, and I said, Lord, here's why I'm afraid to do what you're asking me to. Because I knew that giving up my records was just the beginning, that after that, there was more to it than just that. I said, I'm afraid to give up the only thing I've ever been any good at, and the only thing I know how to do, for something I don't know how to do, and I've never really been any good at. All the years I've gone to church, all the years I've been in Bible studies, I've really never learned the Bible. I'm not that good at it. I'm not interested in it. And I don't want to be one of those people at my Lutheran church that gets all excited about church and is all into it. I mean, I don't mind going, but I don't want to be one of those church people, the church lady, or, that's all they do, and that's what they are all into. And God knew my heart. I was pouring out my heart. So he said, he started talking to me. And he said, first of all, I'm not asking you to be like those people at your church, because they don't really know me any more than you do now. And secondly, if you will do this thing, if you will give me your records, get rid of your records, you will be my true disciple, and you'll be one of the people that I will begin teaching you, and I will teach you the Bible, and you'll be one of the few true disciples that I have, because you won't be faking it. and there'll be a real connection there. Well, whatever he said, it totally impressed me, and I was blown away, and I started thinking, this would be worth it. This could mean something. But then the next question was, what proof do I have to do? How do I know he'll really do it? I mean, that's a big step to take, because by now my records had grown quite a bit from the time he first asked me for them. And by the way, when he first asked me, I begged him. I said, Lord, I can't do this now. I don't have enough faith, but please don't give up on me. And someday, somehow, maybe I'll be able to. I just can't do it. I couldn't imagine doing it right when he first asked me. So all this time, I was still praying, don't give up on me. Help me somehow. Help me somehow. So I was wanting to do it, and I would still go to Christian concerts. I was going to Christian activities. And I even remember I went to see a Christian lady whose band, it was a Christian rock thing, and I went and talked to the band. I explained my situation briefly to the guy, and he said he would pray for me, and he told me he's been on airplanes with rock bands, and he knows what I was talking about. That's a very difficult thing when you want to be a rock and roll musician for the world. And so I talked to people. I was always struggling with this, and my own band's success was always seemed to be just about happening, but I don't think God was letting it happen, because he knew he can't tempt me above what I'm able. And if I would have made it with my band at the time, I don't think I could have ever done it. But success was just always eluding us somehow. And I think it was because God wanted me to be able to make my decision. So finally, it's a much longer story to tell how I actually was able to. I met a girl that I led to Christ, and that was something I didn't do a lot of. You don't really learn a whole lot how to do that when you're going to Lutheran church, but they did teach it a little bit, and I used some of the techniques that they taught me in a moment of, you know, where I was really wanting to reach this girl, this young girl, and I asked her the question that they taught us: if you were to die tonight, would you know for sure you would go to heaven? And she gave an answer I had never heard anyone give before. She said, no, I know for sure I would go to hell. And she started crying. And I said, well, doesn't that bother you? And she said, I try not to think about it. But she started telling me of her experience, and so I said, we need to just pray. I tried to read the Bible to her. It wasn't working, because she said the devil was making it come out twisted, everything I was trying to. So I said, we just got to pray. So I led her to Christ. And that girl, when I told her my situation, she said, you mean you know that you have a choice between the devil and God, and you don't know who to choose? And I said, yeah, you're right, it sounds pretty stupid. So anyway, she helped me get the courage to do it. And as a result of that, I began to learn things from God, just like he promised. And in fact, the way he said it is, I'll teach you things that even their pastors and teachers don't know, which that appealed to me. And it's been true. I've learned things. I began to be hungry for the things of God, and I began to have an ability to learn, which I had never had before. And so my life has been quiet, but filled with an exciting, adventuresome time of learning. And I got to check my time here. I'm going to stop right here, and then I'll make a second part, and tell you what happened next. Okay, so here's the rest. It's hard to know what all to tell. What happened at first, that girl helped me, to actually get my records, take them down to the beach after hours, put them in a fire ring, pour lighter fluid all over them, nobody else is around, and light them on fire. The next day, I'm driving around with this same girl, and I guess I got this horrible thought, what if God wasn't watching? I think I expected an angel to appear, or a burning bush, or some kind of a sign, some kind of a really obvious thing that God, first of all, noticed, was watching, and that he was pleased, and that he had a purpose for my life. I'm ready now. Here I am. I'm ready now. Let's do it. What are we doing? And these kinds of thoughts started going through my mind as me and this girl are driving down the freeway. I don't know where we were going, but we were heading somewhere. And I started getting really concerned. What if I did this and nothing happens? What if it was all for nothing? And so I started getting panicked. Man, I'm the biggest stupid fool ever if this is all for nothing. So I started getting really scared. What am I going to have to show for what I've just done? You know. And I'm thinking all these thoughts. What's my reward, basically? I'm not telling her any of this. I'm driving, she's sitting next to me. All of a sudden, she speaks up. She says, you know, when you did that, you're not going to have a reward in this life. I'm like, what? But your reward is in heaven. And nobody and nothing can ever take that away from you. And I don't know how she said it, what all she said, but it meant so much to me at that moment. And I asked her, how did you know to say that? I said, how did you know that's what I was just now thinking? I was getting really worried and scared and panicking. What if I did this and it was for nothing? And she says, I don't know. This is a brand new Christian. I'm a Lutheran. We've never heard of a word of knowledge, a prophesying, you know, the gifts of the Spirit. They don't teach that at Lutheran Church. And I'm not putting Lutherans down, by the way. If you're in a Lutheran church, or you know, it's just where I was at the time. And so I didn't know anything about the gifts of the Spirit or anything like that. But that's what was happening. And we were two babes in Christ, really. Even though I'd been in church my whole life, I didn't learn anything. But I was beginning to learn right then how God operates, how He teaches, how to hear that still small voice, and how to obey, and how to be have a relationship with God. And to me, that's the most important thing that you can ever learn in this life. If you remember the woman at the well that Jesus talked to, He told her a lot of neat things that He didn't even share with His own disciples. They were away buying food, and He starts having a conversation with this woman, and He sends her back to get her husband, and she says, well, I'm not married. He says, I know, and the man that you're with is not your husband. But she goes back into her village. She says, wait here. And she says, come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. Is not this the Messiah? And when these people came back with her, they started interviewing Jesus. They started talking to Him. And they started getting to know Him themselves. And afterwards, they said to the woman, now we believe, not because of what you said, but because of what we ourselves have heard Him say. And we know this is who He says He is. Now, that to me is what all witnessing should look like. I can't tell you anything more than what I've heard Him say about me and to me and what He's taught me. I can share with you what He's taught me. I can show you. I've written a book called How I Almost Sold My Soul that starts with the experience of of how I almost sold my soul. But then it goes into everything I've learned. So I can share with you what I've learned. I've learned a lot of neat stuff. The book is not published, and I would love to get it published. I've sometimes wondered if God was going to call me to be a teacher or a pastor or a minister of some kind. He never did. And so I started writing these things down, just thinking, well, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. Maybe if I write it, you know. And it was a nice outlet. I spent a couple years writing all these things down. And I almost got it published at one point. It turned out the thing that I got involved with was a, quote, vanity publishing thing. And I didn't want to do that. And I was sort of stuck because I'd signed up with them. But they ended up giving it back to me, giving the rights back to my book, because I have a lot of stuff in there that I quote that's copyrighted. There's a lot of song lyrics that I talk about and go over, because there's a lot of really significant stuff in song lyrics of popular bands and rock and roll and stuff. And it's not just the typical... Okay, well, I got cut off there because the discs sort of ran out. That's why I'm in a new location now, but I'm going to try and put these together. Anyway, I was in the middle of a thought saying how what I think real witnessing should really be all about is, instead of telling what Jesus has said to me or taught me, is to bring the person to Jesus and say, Jesus, this person, Jesus, and let you learn how to hear Him for yourself. I would love to be able to teach that. It's really not as hard as you might think, if you're a Christian especially, or even if you're not. If you want to get born again, it's as simple as an act of faith. It's you talking to God who you cannot see, but believing that He can see you, believing that He's real. And Paul, the apostle, said, if haply they might feel after Him and find Him, though He be not far from any one of us. So faith is where it begins. Without faith it's impossible to please God. But they that come to God must believe that He is, and that He is a rewarder of them who diligently seek Him. If you seek God, if you feel after Him and find Him, it's a matter of your heart wanting to know God and being honest and just telling Him so. Say, Lord, I'd love to know You. God, I'd love to know You. I want to know who You are. Talk to me. I want to trust You. Is there anything You want me to do? And faith is Him giving you something He wants you to do. Him talking to you, listening, and then obeying whatever He tells you to do. It takes faith to do that. That's what waiting on the Lord is really all about. You hear in the Bible it says, they that wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They'll mount up with wings as eagles. They'll run and not be weary. They'll walk and not faint. And I learned what waiting on the Lord is really all about. When I was young and going to my Lutheran church, we used to have Bible studies or group sessions where we'd sit around in a small group and we'd talk about what's going on in your life lately. And you might hear somebody say something like this, well, I'm waiting on the Lord for a car, or I'm waiting on the Lord for a new job, or I'm waiting on the Lord for this or that. You know, I've prayed, I've asked for this need that I have, and now I'm waiting on the Lord for that need. And I used to think that's what waiting on the Lord was. But I learned that we often get everything backwards. And whereas that kind of waiting on the Lord sounds like I've asked the Lord for something, and now after I said amen, from now until it comes, that's me waiting on the Lord, right? That sounds right. But I learned that what the Bible actually means, what God actually means about they that wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. It means you go to God and you wait on Him the way a waiter waits on a customer in a restaurant. See, anyone in the world knows what waiting on somebody means. It's when we turn it about God that we get all messed up. We don't know what these simple terms really mean. Waiting on the Lord means you go to Him and you say, what do You want me to do about this, that, or the other? What do You want me to do with my life? What do You want me to do for You today? And you listen and you believe that He'll talk to you. And when you're faced with a situation, the Bible says God gives us situations, wilderness journeys. He gives us problems, hoping that we will go to Him and learn that man does not live by bread only, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God does man live. So He led us into the wilderness and He suffered us to hunger in order that He might teach us that way. So when you're faced with a problem you don't know how to deal with, when you're faced with a desire you can't fulfill, when you're faced with any hunger, any thirst, Jesus said, come to me, I will give you food and drink, and whoever drinks and eats from me will never thirst or hunger again in that area. And that's how I began to learn. Is any question I had, I could ask God, and He would give me an answer. I meditated on the Word. I became hungry for the Word. I began listening to every preacher I could find on the radio, TV, or going to church constantly. That's why I started going to more churches than just my Lutheran church. I found that I couldn't get enough of God, and I wanted to go anywhere I could learn anything. And so I'm trying to speed this along and cover a lot of ground very quickly. But basically, waiting on the Lord is listening to Him, listening to what He wants you to do. And if He gives you a task you obey Him. And when you do that, He puts your needs first. It's sort of a weird paradox, because when you put Him first, He puts you first. When you put, turn to me, I will turn to you, says the Lord. When you turn to Him, and when you put His needs first, He very quickly switches that around and makes your needs met. It's kind of like if you worked for a rich guy, and if he says, I want you to go to this city and run these errands for me. Well, you could say, well, but my tire's flat on my car. Well, he's going to say, here, go buy yourself a new tire. He's going to make your needs met first so that you can carry out his desires. Doesn't that make sense? So the reason that the guy on the road, the Good Samaritan, the reason the Good Samaritan was able to help the guy who had fallen among thieves is because his own needs were already all met. So God first wants to meet your needs, and when you're all full up, then you have to give to others. That's why it's more blessed to give than to receive, because it's a lot more of a blessing when you're the one giving than when you're the guy who fell among thieves that needs the blessing. So I'm trying to cover a lot of ground here, but I think I'll wrap this up for now, and I might do another one later. I don't know if I answered all the questions I was going to try and cover, but I can always make another video if there's any more questions or comments and stuff. Thank you guys.